His voice cut through the silence like a blade. Bend over and present like a good Omega. Ilva's breath caught, her entire body trembling as Pack Alpha Kale stood behind her in his dwelling, massive and commanding, waiting for her obedience. She had known this moment was coming from the instant his ice-blue eyes had locked onto hers during the mating ceremony, singling her out from all the other unmated Omegas. But knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. Now she was here, alone with the pack's most ruthless alpha, about to be claimed in ways she had only heard whispered about by mated Omegas. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you're watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. Now back to our story. The mating ceremony had been held under the full moon as tradition dictated, in a sacred ritual where the pack alpha chose a mate from among the unmated Omegas. Ilva had never expected to be chosen. She was too pale, too quiet, too different with her snow-white skin and hair that marked her as touched by winter spirits according to pack elders. Most alphas preferred Omegas with darker coloring, warmer features, voices that carried easily across the settlement. But when Kale had stood before the gathered unmated Omegas and his gaze had found her, Ilva felt her entire world shift. "You," he had said, his voice carrying absolute authority that made every Omega present shiver. "The white-haired one. You will be my mate." The other Omegas had stepped back, leaving her exposed before him. Kyle was massive even for an alpha, he standing well over 8 feet tall with a body built from decades of leading the pack through battles and hunts. His long dark hair was bound back, revealing a face that was handsome but harsh, scarred from countless fights. He wore furs and leather that barely contained his muscular frame. Every inch of him radiated dominance and power. "Do you accept?" Kale had asked, though everyone knew refusal was not truly an option. The pack alpha's choice was sacred law. "Yes," Ilva had whispered, her voice barely audible. "Louder," he commanded. "Let the pack hear your acceptance." "Yes," she said more firmly. "I accept." "Good," Kale said with satisfaction. "Then come. The mating ritual begins now." He had turned and walked toward his dwelling at the center of the settlement. Ilva followed on trembling legs, acutely aware of every pack member watching their procession. Some looked envious that she had been chosen by such a powerful alpha. Others looked pitying, knowing what awaited her. Kale was known throughout the pack as ruthless and demanding. He expected absolute obedience and gave no mercy to those who disappointed him. Which brought her to this moment, standing in his dwelling, hearing that command, "Bend over and present like a good Omega." Her hands shook as she slowly lowered herself into the presenting position the pack mothers had taught, forearms bracing against the furs covering the floor, positioning herself for his claiming. She felt exposed and vulnerable in a way she had never experienced. Kale's hand traced down her spine, possessive and claiming. "You tremble," he observed. "Fear or anticipation?" "Both," Ilva said honestly. "Honest," Kale said with approval. "That is good. I have no patience for Omegas who pretend false confidence or try to hide their true reactions. You will always tell me truth, even when it is difficult." "Yes, Alpha," she said, using the formal title. "Just Kale when we are alone," he said. "You are my mate now. That gives you privileges others do not have, but it also means I will demand more from you than I would from any other Omega. Do you understand?" "Yes, Kale," she said, testing his name on her tongue. It felt strange and intimate to use it. He moved behind her and she felt his hands on her body, exploring and claiming with proprietary confidence. Ilva had never been touched like this before. Her breath came faster as sensation built. The pack mothers had said the first claiming would be intense, in that virgin Omegas often cried from overwhelming feelings they had no context for processing. "You belong to me now," Kale said, his voice rough with possession. Your body, your submission, your strength, all of it mine to command and use as I see fit. Ylva felt tears prick her eyes, not from pain yet, but from the intensity of the moment. She had gone from invisible Omega to the Pack Alpha's chosen mate in a matter of hours. Now she was in his dwelling, positioned for claiming, hearing him declare absolute ownership over her. It was overwhelming. She felt him position himself, and then he claimed her in one demanding movement that made her cry out. The pain was sharp and immediate, her untouched body unprepared for his size and force. Tears spilled down her cheeks as he established his dominance thoroughly and without mercy. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. He had chosen her, wanted her specifically, saw something in her that others had missed. The claiming continued for what felt like hours. Kale was relentless, demanding, pushing her past every limit she thought she had. He made her cry, made her beg, made her body respond in ways she had not known were possible. When his knot finally locked them together, Ylva was shaking and sobbing from overwhelming sensation. "Shh," Kale said, his hand surprisingly gentle in her white hair. "You did well for your first time. The pain will fade." She could not speak, could only tremble against him while his knot kept them joined. He held her through it, his massive body a solid presence behind her. When the knot finally released, Kale lifted her easily and carried her to the sleeping furs. He laid her down gently, a stark contrast to his earlier roughness. "Rest," he commanded. "We will mate again before morning. But first you need to recover." Ylva curled into the furs, her body aching everywhere. She felt claimed in ways that went beyond physical. Kale had marked her as his, established his dominance completely. There would be no question in anyone's mind that she belonged to the Pack Alpha now. Kale moved around the dwelling, adding wood to the fire, checking weapons, performing routine tasks while she rested. Ylva watched him through heavy eyes. This massive alpha who had chosen her for reasons she still did not understand. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why choose me when there were other Omegas who would have been easier?" "Easier does not interest me," Kyle said without looking at her. "I have led this pack for 20 winters. I have fought countless battles, survived injuries that would have killed weaker alphas, made decisions that determined whether pack members lived or died. I do not need a mate who is easy. I need one who will be strong enough to stand beside me." Ylva sat up slowly, ignoring her body's protests. "And you think I am strong? You are still here," Kale said, finally turning to look at her. "Still conscious, still able to speak. I claimed you roughly, demanded your submission, pushed you hard. Yet you endured. Most virgin Omegas would have passed out from overwhelming sensation. You stayed present through all of it. That tells me you have strength you do not yet recognize in yourself." "I was crying," Ylva pointed out. "Tears are not weakness," Kale said. "They are honest response to intense experience. You cried, but you also obeyed. You submitted, but you also questioned. That balance is what I need in a mate. Someone who will give me the obedience the pack expects, but also the truth I require." He came to sit beside her on the furs, his massive frame making her feel small. "Over the coming seasons, I will demand much from you," he said. "Will push you to discover capabilities you did not know you possessed. Will expect you to be strong when pack members look to you for guidance. Being the Pack Alpha's mate is not an easy role. It requires strength that most Omegas do not have." "I am not sure I have that strength," Ylva admitted. "Good," Kale said. "Certainty makes Omegas complacent. Doubt makes them work to prove themselves capable. You will grow into this role because you will have no choice. And I will be there to demand your best at every turn." He kissed her then, claiming her mouth with the same dominance he had claimed her body. When he pulled back, Ylva was breathless. "Come," he said, "it is time for you to mate me again. This time I want you to show me your strength rather than just enduring mine." She let him position her differently this time, more active than the first claiming. And as he took her again with demanding intensity, Ylva discovered he was right. She did have strength she had not recognized. The ability to meet his intensity rather than just survive it, to push back against his dominance even while submitting to it. He claimed her 3 more times before morning, each claiming different from the last, each teaching her something new about her own capabilities. By the time dawn light filtered through gaps in the dwelling walls, Ylva was thoroughly claimed and bonded to her alpha, and her body bore marks of his possession. Her scent was mixed with his, and the mating bond between them was established. Kale rose first, dressing in furs and leather, while Ylva watched from the sleeping furs. She felt different than she had the previous evening, changed fundamentally. "You will rest today," Kale said. "Tonight we will present ourselves to the pack as fully mated. They will expect to see you marked and claimed. Will expect me to have established my dominance completely. Your role is to stand beside me and let them see that you accept your position as my mate. Tomorrow your training begins." "Training?" Ylva asked. "Being Pack Alpha's mate requires skills most Omegas never develop," Kale said. "You will learn to fight, to hunt, to make decisions that affect the entire pack. You will learn to be strong in ways that go beyond physical endurance. I will demand everything from you and accept nothing less than your best capabilities." "Why?" Ylva asked. "Why push me so hard?" "Because I see what you can become," Kale said, "and I refuse to let you settle for being less than your full potential. The pack needs a strong alpha mate, and you need to discover exactly how fierce you truly are beneath the frightened exterior everyone sees." He left her then to attend to pack business. Ylva lay in the sleeping furs, her body aching but her mind spinning. She had been claimed by the pack's most ruthless alpha, had endured his demands and discovered capabilities she had not known existed. And now he expected her to become something she had never imagined being. Strong, fierce, capable of standing beside him, and the challenge felt impossible. But something in her responded to his certainty that she could meet it. Over the following months, Kale proved true to his word. He trained her relentlessly. Combat skills so she could defend herself and others. Hunting techniques so she understood what pack warriors experienced. Decision-making so she could advise him on pack matters. And he continued to claim her with the same demanding intensity, pushing her to meet his strength rather than just endure it. Ylva discovered she was capable of far more than anyone, including herself, had believed. She learned to fight with weapons and without, to track prey through forest and snow, to make difficult choices about resource distribution and conflict resolution. And she learned to meet her alpha's intensity in their private moments, and to give as fiercely as she took, to push back against his dominance while still submitting to his authority. The pack watched her transformation with mixed reactions. Some respected her growing strength. Others resented that the pale, quiet Omega they had dismissed had become someone formidable. But all recognized that Kale had been right to choose her. She was exactly the kind of mate the Pack Alpha needed. Years passed. Ylva bore Kale 3 children, each birth proving her strength anew. She stood beside him when he made difficult pack decisions, offering counsel he actually listened to. She fought beside warriors when threats came, proving her combat skills were real. And she continued to be claimed by her ruthless alpha with intensity that never diminished, their bond deepening with every challenge they faced together. One winter evening when their children were grown and leading their own lives, Kyle found Ylva in their dwelling preparing evening meal. He came up behind her and she felt his familiar presence, still as commanding as the night he had first chosen her. Bend over and present like a good Omega, he said. The same words from their mating night. Ylva turned to face him instead, meeting his eyes directly. Or, she said with a slight smile, you could ask me properly. Kale's eyes flashed with interest at her boldness. And what would be asking properly? Please join me, my fierce mate, Ylva suggested. Allow me to show you how much I still crave your claiming. Kale laughed, the sound rare and genuine. You have grown bold over the years, he said with approval. Good. I would hate to have a mate who stayed timid forever. He claimed her then as he had countless times before, their mating as intense as ever despite decades together. And afterward, holding her close, he whispered words he rarely spoke. I chose well that mating night, he said, better than I knew at the time. Ylva smiled against his chest. So did I, she said. Even though I had no choice in the moment, I would choose you again, knowing everything I know now. Their legacy lived on in strong children who had inherited Kale's dominance and Ylva's resilience. In pack members who had learned that strength came in unexpected forms. In the understanding that ruthless demanding could be paired with genuine respect and create something enduring. And the pack alpha who had commanded her to bend over and present like a good Omega that first mating night had actually given her the tools to stand tall and fierce beside him. The Omega who had trembled in fear had become a mate worthy of the pack's most ruthless alpha. And together they had built something that would endure long after they were gone. Their story began with a command and a virgin Omega's trembling submission, but it grew into something far more complex and powerful. The night after the mating ceremony, when Ylva presented herself to the pack bearing visible marks of Kale's claiming, whispers spread through the settlement. Some pack members expressed concern that their ruthless alpha had been too rough with such a delicate-looking Omega. Others predicted Ylva would not survive the demands of being pack alpha's mate, but those who watched closely saw something different. Saw the way Ylva stood straighter than she had before, the way her eyes held new awareness, the way she moved with growing confidence despite obvious physical discomfort. Kale had not broken her during that first claiming. He had cracked her open and revealed strength that had been dormant. The training began the very next morning. Ylva woke sore and marked, her body reminding her of everything Kale had demanded the night before. But when he entered the dwelling carrying training weapons, she did not protest or ask for more recovery time. She rose from the sleeping furs and faced him. Today you learn to defend yourself, Kale said without preamble. Every Omega in this pack should know basic combat, but the Alpha's mate must be truly skilled. Enemies will target you to weaken me. I will not allow you to be vulnerable. He handed her a practice blade, lighter than true weapons but still substantial. Ylva's hand trembled under its weight. I have never held a weapon before, she admitted. I know, Kale said. That is why we start now. Defend yourself. He came at her fast, not giving her time to overthink. Ylva raised the blade instinctively but clumsily. Kale knocked it aside easily and had her pinned before she could blink. Again, he said, releasing her. This time anticipate where I will strike. They practiced for hours. Ylva was clumsy and slow, her movements unpracticed, her strength nothing compared to his. But she kept trying, kept learning from each mistake. Kale was merciless in his instruction, giving no praise for effort, only for improvement. When she finally managed to block one of his strikes properly, he nodded once in acknowledgement. Better, he said. Do that 1,000 more times and it might become instinct. Over the following weeks, weapons training became routine. Every morning, Ylva woke sore from the previous day's exertions and Kale's nighttime claiming. Every morning, she picked up practice weapons anyway and worked until her muscles screamed. Slowly, awkwardly, she improved, but weapons training was only part of her education. Kale also taught her pack politics, showing her how to read power dynamics and navigate complex relationships between pack members. He took her on hunts, teaching her to track and move silently through forest. He involved her in pack meetings, expecting her to offer opinions on matters that affected everyone. The other Omegas watched her transformation with complicated feelings. Some admired her growing strength and confidence. Others resented that she was being given opportunities they would never have. A few tried to befriend her, seeking proximity to the pack alpha's favor. But Ylva remained cautious about friendships, uncertain who was genuine versus who sought advantage. The only relationship she felt certain of was with Kale himself. He demanded everything from her, pushed her relentlessly, gave her no mercy in training or claiming. But he also saw her clearly in ways no one else ever had. Saw past the pale, delicate exterior to the fierce, capable Omega she was becoming. And he respected her growing strength even as he continued to dominate her. Their intimate life remained intense. Kale claimed her nightly with the same ruthless demanding he had shown that first mating night. But as Ylva grew stronger and more confident, their couplings evolved. She learned to meet his intensity, to push back against his dominance while still submitting to his authority. Their matings became battles of a sort, each testing the other's limits, each discovering new depths to their connection. One night, several months after their mating, Kyle claimed her with particular intensity. Ylva was pinned beneath his massive body, overwhelmed by sensation, when he growled against her throat. "You are magnificent like this," he said. "Strong enough to take everything I give, fierce enough to demand I give you more. This is what I saw in you that mating night, this potential for fierceness hidden beneath frightened exterior." Ylva could not speak, too lost in overwhelming feeling, but she understood what he meant. She was no longer the trembling virgin who had bent over on command. She had become something more, someone capable of matching her ruthless alpha's intensity. Months turned to seasons. Ylva's combat skills progressed from awkward to competent to genuinely skilled. Her understanding of pack politics deepened. Her confidence in her role as Alpha's mate solidified, and when she became pregnant with their first child, she refused to let it slow her training. Kyle insisted she continue learning to fight even with a swelling belly, arguing that pregnancy was not weakness and she needed to remain capable of defending herself and their unborn child. The birth was difficult. Ylva labored for an entire day and night, her body struggling to deliver an alpha child who had inherited Kyle's size. The pack midwives worried she would not survive, but Ylva endured through sheer stubborn strength, refusing to give up, refusing to let pain defeat her. When she finally delivered a massive, healthy son, Kale held the boy carefully in his scarred hands and looked at Ylva with something new in his eyes. "You are the strongest Omega I have ever known," he said quietly. "To survive carrying and birthing an alpha this size, to refuse to let pain break you. I chose better than I knew that mating night." Their son they named Vigo, meaning battle. He grew fierce and strong, showing alpha traits from infancy. 2 more children followed in the coming years, a daughter named Astrid, meaning divine strength, and another son named Eric, meaning eternal ruler. Each birth proved Ylva's resilience anew. Each child inherited their parents' best qualities, growing into formidable pack members. As the children grew, Ylva's role in the pack expanded. She became not just the alpha's mate, but a leader in her own right. Pack members sought her counsel on matters ranging from conflict resolution to resource management. She trained young Omegas in self-defense, passing along the skills Kale had taught her. She hunted alongside warriors, proving her combat abilities were real. And she stood beside Kale when he made difficult pack decisions, offering perspectives he valued. The pack thrived under their combined leadership. Kale's ruthless strength paired with Ylva's fierce wisdom created balance. He made hard decisions without hesitation. She ensured those decisions considered long-term consequences and pack member well-being. Together they guided their people through challenges that would have broken weaker leadership. Years passed, and their children reached adulthood and found their own mates. Vigo became a respected warrior. Astrid became a skilled healer. Eric left to join another pack, forging alliances through his mating choice. And through it all, Kyle and Ylva's bond remained as strong as that first mating night, maintained through continued claiming and honest partnership. One winter evening, when they were both showing silver in their hair but still strong and capable, Kyle watched Ylva spar with a young alpha warrior. She moved with practiced grace now, her white hair bound back, her body scarred from years of training and battles. The young warrior was skilled, but Ylva was experienced. She disarmed him efficiently and had a blade at his throat before he realized he had lost. Kyle felt fierce pride watching his mate dominate an opponent half her age. And when the sparring ended and the young warrior left humbled but wiser, Kyle approached Ylva. "You have come far from the trembling virgin who could barely hold a blade," he observed. She turned to him with a slight smile. "And whose fault is that? You are the one who refused to let me remain weak." He pulled her close, not caring that they stood in the center of the settlement where anyone might see. "I have never regretted choosing you," he said. "Every challenge we faced, you rose to meet. Every demand I made, you exceeded. You became exactly the mate I needed and more than I dared hope for." She kissed him then, bold and claiming. "And I have never regretted accepting you," she said. "Even though I had no real choice that mating night, I would choose you again knowing everything that came after. The ruthless demanding, the relentless pushing, in the refusal to let me hide in weakness. All of it made me who I am." They mated that night with the same intensity they had shared for decades, their bond as fierce as ever. And afterward, lying tangled together in familiar sleeping furs, Ylva traced the scars on Kale's chest. "Do you remember what you said to me that first mating night?" she asked. "I said many things," Kale replied. "What specific words do you mean?" "Bend over and present like a good Omega," Ylva said. "Those were your first real words to me after choosing me as mate." He smiled, the expression rare on his harsh features. "And you obeyed perfectly, trembling and terrified but obedient." "Yes," Ylva agreed. "But I was not good yet. I was frightened and uncertain and had no idea what I was capable of. You made me good. Made me strong and fierce and capable, in the ruthless demanding you are known for. That is what I needed to become who I am now." Kale pulled her closer. "We made each other," he said. "I gave you the challenges that brought out your strength. You gave me the partnership that made my ruthlessness purposeful rather than just cruel. Together we built something neither of us could have created alone. Their legacy endured through their fierce children, through pack members they had trained and led, through the understanding that strength came from being demanded of, rather than protected from challenge. The pack alpha who had commanded submission on mating night had actually given his chosen Omega the tools to stand equal beside him. The trembling virgin had become a warrior and leader, and together they had proven that ruthless demanding paired with genuine respect could forge bonds strong enough to last entire lifetimes and beyond. The seasons continued. Kale and Ylva grew older but never softened. Their intensity remained fierce, their claiming as demanding as ever. They became legendary in the pack. Stories spread about the ruthless alpha and his fierce white-haired mate. Young Omegas sometimes came to Ylva seeking advice. "Being alpha's mate is not easy," she would say. "Kyle demands everything from me constantly, pushes me past limits regularly. But he also sees me clearly, respects my capabilities, and has made me far more than I thought possible. If you want easy mating, choose a gentler alpha. If you want to discover what you are truly capable of, choose someone who will demand it from you. And their son Vigo eventually became pack alpha when Kyle grew too old to lead. The transition was smooth because Kyle had taught him well. Astrid became the pack's most skilled healer. Eric sent messages from his adopted pack, sharing news of his growing family. One late autumn evening in their final years, Kyle and Ylva sat watching sunset over the settlement. "Tell me truly," Kyle said. "If you could go back to that mating night knowing everything, would you still accept my choice?" Without hesitation, Ylva said. "Every moment, every challenge, every ruthless demand. All of it led to this life. I would not change anything. Even the pain of that first claiming," Kale pressed. "When I made you cry and gave no mercy despite your virgin fear." "Especially that," Ylva said firmly. "Because that was when I discovered I could endure more than I believed. You could have been gentler, could have eased me gradually. But then I might have remained the frightened Omega everyone expected. Your ruthlessness showed me I was capable of so much more." Kale took her hand. "I knew," he said. "The moment I saw you, I knew you had potential everyone was missing. I knew if I demanded your capabilities, you would discover them." "You took a risk," Ylva said. "I could have broken instead of becoming strong." "You could have," Kale agreed. "But I read you correctly. Saw that you needed to be broken open rather than protected." Inside their dwelling that night, Kale pulled Ylva close. "One more time," he said quietly. "One more claiming before we are too old." "Then claim me," she said, "as you did that first mating night. Show me you are still the ruthless alpha I chose to stand beside." He did, taking her with intensity that defied his age. And when they finished, Ylva whispered words she rarely spoke. "I love you, Kale. From that first night when you commanded me to bend over and present like a good Omega, through every ruthless demand, until whatever comes after this life." "And I you," Kyle replied. "You became everything I knew you could be and more. My fierce Omega, my strongest partner, my most valued mate." They fell asleep in each other's arms. When morning came, Kyle did not wake. He had passed peacefully, held close by the mate he had claimed so ruthlessly years before. Ylva woke to find him gone and felt her heart break even as she understood it was his time. The pack mourned their former alpha. Vigo led the rituals, but Ylva spoke the truest eulogy. Kyle was ruthless, she said. He demanded everything. He gave no mercy to weakness, pushed everyone past their limits. Many feared him, but he made every pack member stronger by refusing to let them settle for less than their full capabilities. He made me strong when everyone believed I was fragile, and I will be grateful for his ruthless demanding until I join him in whatever comes after. She lived 2 more seasons after Kyle's death, continuing to train young Omegas and advise Vigo, but everyone could see she was fading without her mate. When she finally passed during a winter storm, the pack understood it was her choice to join Kale rather than remain without him. They buried her beside her mate on a hilltop overlooking the settlement. And the story they told became legend. The ruthless pack alpha who saw strength hidden beneath delicate appearance. I'm the trembling virgin who became his fiercest partner. The mating night that began with a command and grew into the deepest partnership the pack had witnessed. The bond forged through ruthless demanding and fierce accepting that proved strength came from being challenged rather than protected. Young Omegas would visit their grave for generations, seeking inspiration from the fierce pair who proved that ruthless and fierce could combine to create something eternal and enduring across time and many generations to come, forever and always through all eternity. Their story was told at mating ceremonies as both warning and promise. warning that choosing a ruthless alpha meant accepting constant demanding and absolute refusal to accept any weakness or comfortable limitations that kept omegas small and protected. I promised that such choosing could lead to discovering capabilities never imagined, strength never accessed, fierceness called forth through challenges faced together across lifetimes lived at full intensity without apology or regret or settling for comfortable limitations that would have kept them weak and protected and ultimately unfulfilled and small and hidden from discovering their full fierce potential and true capabilities and strength. The legacy Kyle and Ilva built extended far beyond their own lifetimes. Their son Vigo, who became Pack Alpha after his father, carried forward the understanding that true strength required demanding it from those you led. But he also learned from watching his mother that fierce capability could be built through proper challenging rather than just inherited. Yet when Vigo chose his own mate during a mating ceremony years after his parents had passed, he looked for the same qualities his father had seen in Ilva. Not the obvious strength that everyone could see, but the hidden potential waiting to be called forth through proper demanding. He chose an Omega named Brynhild, who reminded him of his mother. Quiet and observant, pale and delicate in appearance, underestimated by everyone including herself. And like his father before him, Vigo demanded everything from his chosen mate, from the very first claiming. Brynhild later told other Omegas that being claimed by Vigo was overwhelming and intense, that she cried and trembled and thought she could not endure. But she also discovered capabilities she had never accessed before. Vigo pushed her to train in combat as his father had pushed Ilva, and he involved her in pack decisions as his parents had modeled. He claimed her with ruthless intensity while also seeing her clearly and respecting her growing strength. The pattern established by Kyle and Ilva continued through their children and grandchildren. The understanding that being demanded of could create strength rather than breaking it, that ruthless pushing paired with genuine seeing could forge powerful partnerships. That comfortable protection often kept Omegas small while fierce challenging helped them become their full capable selves. But not everyone in the pack agreed with this approach. Some believed that gentler treatment was kinder to Omegas, that protecting them from harsh demands showed more respect than pushing them past comfortable limits. A faction developed that argued the old ways of keeping Omegas safe and sheltered were better than the new philosophy Kyle and Ilva had introduced. The debate came to a head several years after Ilva's death when a young alpha named Torben chose a mate and declared he would treat her gently rather than demanding her strength. His chosen Omega Sina was grateful for his approach, preferring his gentle protection to the ruthless demanding she had feared. For the first seasons, their mating seemed to prove the gentle faction right. Sina was content and comfortable, never pushed past her limits, never demanded of beyond what came easily. She remained sweet and soft and protected. But when raiders attacked the settlement one winter, Sina found herself unable to defend even herself. She had never trained in combat because Torben had protected her from such harsh challenges. When warriors fell and she was cornered by enemies, she froze in terror, having no skills or confidence to draw upon. She survived only because other pack members intervened, but the experience left her shaken and diminished. Brynhild, who had been trained by Vigo as thoroughly as Ilva had been trained by Kyle, fought alongside the warriors during that same attack. She was fierce and capable, her combat skills saving multiple pack members including Sina. The contrast was stark. The Omega who had been ruthlessly demanded of versus the Omega who had been gently protected. After the attack, Sina came to Brynhild seeking advice. "I thought being protected was what I wanted," she admitted. "Torben has been nothing but gentle with me. He never demands more than I can easily give. But when danger came, I was useless. You were fighting beside warriors while I cowered in fear. How do I become strong like you?" "It is not easy," Brynhild said honestly. Being Vigo's mate means being constantly challenged, constantly pushed, constantly demanded of. He gives me no mercy in training or claiming, expects me to be fierce even when I feel weak. It is exhausting and overwhelming, and sometimes I resent how hard he pushes me. But it also makes me capable, makes me strong, makes me someone who can defend myself and others when danger comes. Can I learn now? Sina asked. Even though I was not trained from the beginning? You can, Brynhild said. But it will be harder because you must undo seasons of comfortable softness before you can build real strength. And then you must convince Torben to start demanding more from you, which may be difficult if he believes protecting you shows his care. Sina did convince Torben eventually, though it took time and difficult conversations. He had to understand that his gentle protection, though well-intentioned, had left her vulnerable and incapable. That true caring sometimes meant demanding growth even when it was uncomfortable. That pushing someone past their limits could be an act of respect rather than cruelty. Torben began training Sina in combat and survival skills, though he struggled with being ruthless enough to truly challenge her. His instinct was always to ease off when she struggled, to protect her from difficulty rather than push through it. But with Vigo's guidance, he learned to demand more, to refuse to accept comfortable limitations, and to see potential in Sina that she had not yet accessed. The change in Sina over the following seasons was remarkable. She went from soft and fearful to increasingly fierce and capable. Not as skilled as Brynhild, who had been trained for mating night, but far stronger than the protected Omega she had been. And she found that being demanded of while challenging was ultimately more fulfilling than being sheltered. The pack watched this transformation, and the lessons became clear. Gentleness and protection had their place, but they could not be the only approach to Omega development. Some Omegas needed to be pushed and challenged and demanded of to discover their full capabilities. The key was matching the approach to the Omega's actual needs rather than assuming all Omegas wanted the same treatment. And this understanding became part of Kael and Ylva's lasting legacy. Not that all Omegas should be ruthlessly demanded of, but that alphas should look clearly at their chosen mates and see what they truly needed. Some Omegas thrived under gentle care and should receive it. But others needed fierce demanding to access hidden strength, and protecting them from challenge actually harmed them by keeping them small and incapable. Decades after Ylva's death, the pack still told stories about her transformation from trembling virgin to fierce warrior mate. Young Omegas who felt underestimated or trapped in others' limited expectations would visit her grave seeking inspiration. They would remember that she too had been dismissed as too pale, too quiet, too delicate. But the right alpha had seen her clearly and demanded her strength into existence. Vigo eventually grew old and passed leadership to his own son, Ylva's grandson, who carried her name in male form as Ylvar. The pattern continued through generations. Alphas learning to see clearly what their mates needed. Omegas discovering capabilities they had never imagined. Partnerships built through fierce demanding or gentle care depending on what genuinely served each Omega's growth and strength. But it was always Kael and Ylva who were remembered as the original example. The ruthless pack alpha and his fierce mate. The mating night that began with a command to bend over and present. The claiming that made a virgin cry but also revealed her hidden strength. The decades of partnership built through constant demanding and constant choosing. Their story lived on in every Omega who discovered she was stronger than anyone believed, and in every Alpha who learned to see clearly past surface appearance to hidden potential. In every partnership that proved ruthless demanding paired with genuine respect could create something enduring. The mating ceremonies still referenced their story. Alphas preparing to choose mates were reminded to look beyond obvious qualities to hidden potential. Omegas preparing to be chosen were reminded that being demanded of was not cruelty but opportunity if paired with true seeing. The words Kale had spoken that first mating night became part of pack tradition, not as a command all alphas must give, but as a reminder of what that night represented. The moment when comfortable protection ended and fierce demanding began, when a trembling virgin discovered she could endure overwhelming intensity, and when an alpha took responsibility for calling forth the strength he saw hidden beneath delicate appearance. Bend over and present like a good Omega, the command that had started everything. That had marked the beginning of Ilva's transformation from protected to fierce. That had established the pattern of ruthless demanding that would influence generations. Young alphas sometimes asked Vigo what his father had really been like beyond the legend. Was he truly as ruthless as the stories suggested? Yes, Vigo would say. My father gave no mercy to weakness, no quarter to comfortable limitations. He pushed my mother relentlessly from their mating night until his death, demanded everything from her constantly. But he also saw her more clearly than anyone else ever had, recognized capabilities she did not know she possessed. He respected her growing strength even as he continued to dominate her. The ruthlessness was real, but so was the respect beneath it. And your mother? The young alphas would ask. Did she resent being pushed so hard? At times, Vigo would admit. There were moments when she was exhausted from training or overwhelmed from demanding claiming when she wished for gentler treatment. But she also knew that gentle treatment would have left her weak and protected and ultimately unfulfilled. She needed to be pushed, needed to be demanded of, needed an alpha ruthless enough to refuse to let her hide in comfortable weakness. My father gave her that, and she was grateful for it even when it was difficult. The legacy endured through countless partnerships influenced by Kale and Ilva's example, through Omegas who discovered they were capable of far more than protective treatment allowed them to access, through alphas who learned that truly seeing their mates sometimes meant demanding growth that was uncomfortable, through the understanding that there were many paths to strong partnerships but matching approach to actual need was essential. And through it all, the story remained. The ruthless pack alpha who saw hidden potential in a pale, quiet Omega. The mating night command that marked the beginning of fierce transformation. The decades of partnership proving that demanding and respecting could coexist. The bond that endured beyond death into legacy that shaped entire generations. Their graves on the hilltop overlooking the settlement became sacred ground, not in a formal religious sense, but in the understanding that something important had started there, that the pair buried there had changed how the pack thought about strength and demanding and Omega capability, that their fierce partnership had opened possibilities for others to discover their own strength through proper challenging. Young Omegas still visited seeking courage to accept demanding partnerships. Young alphas visited seeking wisdom about how to see clearly and demand appropriately. And everyone who visited understood that the graves held more than just two people. They held the legacy of transformation, the promise that being demanded of could lead to becoming something far greater than comfortable protection ever allowed. The story continued through generations, each adding their own understanding while maintaining the core truth, and that Kale had been ruthless and demanding and had pushed Ilva without mercy. That Ilva had been frightened and trembling and had endured overwhelming intensity. That together they had built something that proved demanding could be an act of deep respect when paired with genuine seeing. That comfortable protection sometimes kept Omegas small while fierce challenging helped them become their full capable fierce selves. This was the legacy, not simple or easy to understand, not applicable to every Omega or every partnership, but true and powerful for those who needed exactly what Kale and Ilva had demonstrated. The ruthless demanding that called forth hidden strength. the fierce partnership built through constant challenging, in the enduring bond proving that being pushed past comfortable limits could lead to discovering capabilities never imagined, and living at full intensity across entire lifetimes without apology or regret. The influence extended beyond just the immediate pack. Neighboring settlements heard the stories, and some adopted similar approaches. Alphas began looking more carefully at potential mates, seeking hidden strength rather than just obvious qualities. Omegas who had felt trapped by protective treatment began asking for more demanding partnerships. The ripple effects of one mating night, one ruthless claiming, one fierce transformation spread far and wide. There were failures too, of course. Not every attempt to replicate what Kale and Ilva had built succeeded. Some alphas mistook cruelty for demanding, pushing omegas with brutality that broke rather than strengthened. Some omegas who genuinely needed gentler care were pushed inappropriately by alphas who misunderstood the lesson. The key distinction was always the genuine seeing beneath the demanding. Kale had been ruthless with Ilva, but he had also truly seen her potential and respected her growing capabilities. He demanded her strength because he believed she possessed it, not because he wanted to dominate someone weak. When alphas lost that distinction, when they demanded without truly seeing or respected, the results were harmful rather than transformative. Vigo worked hard to teach young alphas this crucial difference. Ruthlessness without respect is just cruelty, he would say. My father was harsh and demanding and gave my mother no mercy in training or claiming, but he also listened to her counsel on pack matters, trusted her judgment, acknowledged her growing strength publicly. He dominated her body but respected her mind and spirit. That combination is what made their partnership work. Pure domination without genuine respect would have broken her or created resentment. The balance was essential. One young alpha named Haldor came to Vigo seeking detailed guidance. "I have chosen a mate who reminds me of your mother," Haldor said. "She is pale and quiet and underestimated. I want to demand her strength as your father did, but I fear making mistakes that could harm rather than strengthen her. How do I know if I am pushing appropriately or pushing too hard?" "Watch her closely," Vigo advised. "My father was ruthless, but he was also observant. He could tell the difference between my mother being challenged in ways that made her stronger versus being overwhelmed in ways that would break her. There is a point where demanding becomes too much, where the Omega cannot recover or integrate what is being asked. Good alphas learn to sense that edge and push right up to it without crossing over." Haldor took this advice seriously. When he claimed his chosen mate Astrid on their mating night, he was demanding and intense, but also carefully observant. He pushed her past her comfort, but not past her breaking point. He made her cry from overwhelming sensation, but not from true harm. And in the days that followed, he began her training while watching constantly for signs that he was demanding too much too quickly. Astrid responded similarly to how Ilva had. And she was frightened and uncertain initially, but discovered capabilities she had not known existed. Her combat skills developed. Her confidence grew. Her understanding of pack politics deepened, and her mating with Haldor evolved from simple submission to fierce partnership where she met his intensity with her own strength. This became another example of Kale and Ilva's legacy working well when applied thoughtfully. But there were also examples of failure. An alpha named Skari chose a quiet Omega named Freya and attempted to demand her strength through brutal treatment. But Skari did not truly see Freya clearly. He did not recognize that she genuinely needed gentler care and was not hiding strength beneath protective exterior. She was actually fragile in ways Ilva had never been. Even Skari's ruthless demanding broke rather than strengthened her. Freya eventually fled the partnership, traumatized and damaged, and the pack had to intervene to prevent Skari from claiming another mate until he learned the crucial difference between demanding hidden strength and simply being cruel to someone genuinely delicate. This failure taught important lessons. That Kyle and Ylva's approach was not universal. That some Omegas truly needed protection and gentle care. That the key was accurate seeing of what each specific Omega actually required rather than assuming all Omegas were the same. The story became more nuanced over time. Not just demand strength from your Omega, but see clearly what your Omega needs and provide that, whether it is demanding or gentle care or something in between. Brynhild, Viggo's mate, I eventually became an advisor to young Omegas preparing for potential mating. She would tell them honestly about what being demanded of entailed. Being Viggo's mate is not comfortable, she would say. He pushes me constantly, expects fierceness even when I feel weak, claims me with intensity that can be overwhelming. There are days when I am exhausted from training or sore from demanding coupling and I wish for gentler treatment. But I also know that gentle treatment would leave me weak and dependent and ultimately unfulfilled. I need to be pushed, need to discover what I am capable of through proper challenging. This life suits me even when it is difficult. But she would also add, this approach does not suit every Omega. Some genuinely thrive under protective care. Some need moderate challenging rather than relentless demanding. And the key is knowing yourself well enough to choose or accept the right kind of partnership for your actual needs. Do not accept demanding partnership just because it is celebrated in stories. Accept it only if you genuinely need fierce challenging to become your best self. This honest counsel helped many young Omegas make better choices. Some recognized they needed demanding partnerships and sought alphas who would push them appropriately. Others recognized they needed gentler care and chose differently. Both paths were honored as valid rather than one being considered superior. As decades passed and the original story of Kyle and Ylva grew more distant, some details became legend rather than history. Tales exaggerated the ruthlessness, made Ylva's transformation seem more dramatic and instant than it had been. He simplified the complexity into pure inspiration. But those who had known the pair personally, like their children and those they had trained, kept the accurate story alive. They remembered that Ylva had struggled and doubted and sometimes resented how hard Kale pushed her. That Kale had made mistakes and pushed too hard at times and had to recalibrate his approach. That their partnership, while ultimately successful and enduring, had not been simple or easy. It had been built through constant work, honest communication, willingness to acknowledge when approaches needed adjustment, and mutual respect that developed over time rather than existing perfectly from the beginning. This more complete and honest version of their story was actually more useful to future generations than the simplified legend. But it showed that demanding partnerships required work and attention and adjustment. That being ruthless did not mean being inflexible or unwilling to adapt approaches when needed. That fierce partnerships were built through sustained effort over time rather than created perfectly in a single transformative mating night. Ylva's transformation from trembling virgin to fierce warrior mate had taken years of consistent demanding and training and pushing and challenging. It had not happened overnight despite what simplified stories suggested, and understanding this realistic timeline helped young alphas and omegas have more appropriate expectations about how long real transformation required. The graves on the hilltop remained a place of pilgrimage for those seeking inspiration or guidance. But those who visited wisely understood that they were honoring a complex real partnership rather than a simplified legend. That Kyle and Ylva had been real people with flaws and struggles who had nonetheless built something powerful and enduring through sustained effort and mutual commitment to bringing out each other's best capabilities. Several generations after their deaths, a young Omega named Liv came to visit their graves. She was struggling with a partnership where her alpha Bjorn wanted to demand her strength, but she was not certain she possessed hidden capabilities worth demanding. She felt genuinely fragile rather than secretly strong. "Am I broken?" she asked the silent graves. "The stories say Omegas who refuse demanding are hiding from their own strength. But what if I truly am as delicate as I seem? What if there is no hidden fierceness waiting to be called forth?" An old pack member named Ragna, who had known Ylva personally in the final years of her life, happened to be visiting the graves at the same time. She heard Liv's question and decided to answer. "Not every Omega is Ylva," Ragna said gently. "Ylva had hidden strength that proper demanding revealed. But not all Omegas have that same hidden strength. Some are genuinely delicate and thrive under gentle care. The lesson is not that all Omegas must be demanded of. The lesson is that Alphas must see clearly what their mates actually need and provide that." Liv turned to Ragna gratefully. "How do I know which I am? How do I tell if Bjorn is right to demand strength from me or if he is demanding what I do not possess?" "Listen to your deepest self," Ragna advised. "And when Bjorn demands more from you, do you feel challenged in ways that make you want to rise to meet his expectations? Or do you feel broken and diminished? When he pushes you past comfortable limits, do you discover new capabilities? Or do you simply become more fragile? Your honest answers to these questions will tell you whether his demanding is appropriate for you." Liv considered this carefully. "When Bjorn pushes me," she said slowly, "I mostly feel broken. There have been a few times when I surprised myself by being capable of more than I expected. But mostly I just feel diminished by his demands, like I am failing him and myself by not having the strength he wants me to have." "Then you may be genuinely someone who needs gentler care," Ragna said, "and that is not weakness or failure. That is simply honest understanding of what you need to thrive. Ylva needed demanding. You may need protection. Both are valid. You must help Bjorn see you clearly so he can provide what you actually need rather than what he thinks you should need based on stories about someone else." This conversation helped Liv have honest discussion with Bjorn about what she actually needed. Bjorn had to let go of his expectations based on Kale and Ylva's story and see Liv for who she truly was. When he did, he recognized that she was genuinely delicate rather than hiding strength. He shifted his approach to provide gentler care, and their partnership improved dramatically. This became another part of the legacy. Not just the inspiration of Kale and Ylva's fierce partnership, but also the understanding that their specific approach was not universal, and that seeing clearly meant recognizing when an Omega needed demanding and when they needed gentle care. That both Ylva and Sina and Liv were valid types of Omegas deserving of Alphas who would provide what they actually needed. The pack became known among neighboring settlements for this nuanced understanding of Omega strength and needs. Young Alphas came from distant places to learn how to see clearly and match approach to actual need. Young Omegas came seeking guidance about understanding their own requirements. And always the graves of Kale and Ylva stood on the hilltop as a reminder of where this understanding had started. Years continued. The pack thrived and changed. And through it all, the story remained central to how the pack understood strength and partnership. One particular winter, many generations later, an elderly pack member named Torsten told the complete story to younger generations. Not the simplified legend, but the full, complex truth. He described how Kale had chosen the pale, quiet Omega everyone had overlooked. Then came that first mating night. Torsten did not shy away from how brutal it had been, how Kale had commanded Ylva to bend over and present like a good Omega, how she had obeyed despite terror, how he had claimed her without mercy, making her cry from pain and overwhelming sensation. This was demanding and ruthless and frightening, Torsten said. But Kale had seen strength even in her trembling submission, had recognized potential waiting to be called forth. The next morning, Kale handed Ylva practice weapons and began her combat training. She was clumsy and weak, but he refused to let her rest in weakness. Every day he trained her. Every night he claimed her with ruthless intensity. And slowly over years, Ylva transformed. The young pack members were captivated. They had heard simplified versions, but never the full story of how difficult the transformation had been. But Torsten also described how Kale had respected Ylva's growing strength, how he had listened to her counsel. This combination of ruthless demanding and genuine respect was what made their partnership work, Torsten explained. Torsten told of their years together, raising fierce children, making difficult decisions, their claiming never gentling, their bond growing deeper through decades. He described their final years, how they had grown old but remained fierce, how Kale had claimed Ylva one final time, how he had passed peacefully, held by his mate, how Ylva had chosen to follow him. And then Torsten explained the legacy, how their children had carried forward the understanding, how the pack had learned to distinguish between appropriate demanding and cruelty. When you visit their graves, Torsten concluded, remember that you are honoring real people who built something powerful through sustained work. They were not perfect. Their approach was not universal. But they proved that being ruthlessly demanded of could lead to discovering capabilities never imagined. If the alpha truly saw their mate clearly and respected the strength being called forth. The young pack members sat quietly processing this story. More complex than simplified legend, more realistic. The storm eventually passed, but the story continued to circulate, adding depth to how the pack understood their most famous mating pair. And when young Omegas and Alphas visited the hilltop graves, they came with realistic understanding. They understood that transformation required sustained work, that demanding without respect was harmful, that not every Omega needed the same approach. All of these lessons lived in the legacy of two people whose influence continued shaping how their descendants understood strength and partnership. The graves remained sacred ground because they had opened possibilities, had proven that Omegas dismissed as delicate could become fierce if properly demanded of. This was the true legacy, not a formula to replicate, but an expansion of what was possible. Not a single path, but permission to demand strength or provide gentleness based on actual need. And so their story lived on, changed by each generation, made more complex as understanding deepened. But always returning to that core truth, the mating night when a ruthless pack alpha commanded a trembling virgin to bend over and present like a good Omega, and discovered in her submission the hidden potential for fierceness that would transform not just her life but countless others who would follow the path from frightened obedience to fierce partnership across a lifetime lived at full intensity. The story became teaching tool for understanding many truths about strength and partnership. That being demanded of could reveal capabilities when paired with genuine seeing and respect. That transformation required sustained work, that ruthless and fierce demanding and respecting her could coexist in partnerships that elevated both Alpha and Omega. That not every Omega needed the same approach, but those who needed fierce demanding deserved permission to seek it. These lessons continued shaping how pack members understood their own paths. Young Alphas learned to see clearly what their chosen mates actually needed. Young Omegas learned to understand their own requirements and seek partnerships that would provide them. And everyone understood that Kyle and Ylva's fierce partnership had opened possibilities that enriched all who followed. Their graves on the hilltop stood as permanent reminder of the ruthless pack alpha who saw hidden strength in a pale, quiet Omega everyone had dismissed, of the mating night command that had started everything and marked the transformation, and of the virgin who had discovered through brutal claiming that she possessed fierceness never before imagined. Of the decades they had built together through constant challenging and constant choosing to meet those challenges. Of the legacy that continued teaching generations about the many paths to strengthen partnership.